My name is BC Clark, and I'm with the Nebraska Enterprise Fund. And today we thought we'd do some questions and answers. So I have a few things that we're going to go through and talk about first, and then we'll have you, the audience, ask us any questions on the topics that we're going to present here in just a moment. So, Jim, you want to talk about Nebraska Enterprise Fund? You want to get that going?
Sure, I'll talk real briefly. The Nebraska Enterprise Fund is what's called a CDFI. A CDFI is a community development finance institution, and NEF, as we like to call ourselves, is the only CDFI serving the whole state of Nebraska plus southwest Iowa. There are several other CDFIs serving parts of both states, but we're the only one that serves all of Nebraska, rural and urban, as well as southwest Iowa. We're also a CDFI. We've chosen to work in small business lending, so our focus is going to be in small business lending. Other CDFIs, some of them work in housing, some work in community development, but that's who we are. We've been around about 28 years, and we have a loan fund of approximately $15 million that is available to revolve. And so what that means is we lend it to a company, they grow, they repay their loan, then we revolve it to the next company, they grow, they repay their loan, and so forth. The other things besides loan funds that we provide is training, just like today, opportunities to connect people with good resources. Before this, I was actually on a call with Tony Schultz over at NBDC, for example, where we did a joint training session together on business planning. And then the third thing we do, we use a tool called Growth Wheel, which is a comprehensive coaching tool for small businesses. And this helps us identify how to get businesses into a plan for growth and to expand their business and make it better. So again, revolving loan fund, training, and one-to-one coaching and business support. So that's a little bit about NEF. Feel free to ask myself or BC any additional questions as we go along.
All right, well, thanks, Jim. That's awesome. So today I thought that we look at business planning, we'll look at funding for our business, and sustainability. And we'll just go over some of those things, but mostly we really want to hear some of the questions that you may have, either concerns in your business or questions about getting started in business or how to borrow or whatever that is. So we'll get started here now. The first thing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about business planning and give you some tips that could be helpful to you, especially when you're getting ready to get started as an entrepreneur. And I always say that the first thing is that what is the mission? You have to establish a mission because that mission really explains why your business will exist. And setting out and coming up with that mission, so you kind of need to know what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, and perhaps where. But in that mission statement, it really kind of gives you that explanation on why you're doing that. What is my why for wanting to do this business? And I often find out that sometimes people jump ahead, they get out of step, and they'll say, well, I'm starting my business. I don't have a mission. I don't have a vision. And so what that tells me is that we're going to have issues. So just remember that if you're just starting out, if you're an entrepreneur and you're saying to yourself, I want to start a business, but I'm not sure why. Find out what that why is and write the mission statement for it. The next thing you probably want to do is to analyze what strengths you have. What are the strengths that I'm bringing to this business? And how will my weaknesses impact that? What do I need to do? Who do I need to put aside me that will give me the strengths in those areas where I may not be as strong in? And what are the opportunities here besides, making money? Shouldn't be the only reason that we start a business. That is one of the reasons, but it shouldn't be the main reason. But then, what are those opportunities that are available out there? How can I help someone else by doing this business? And then what are the threats of me doing this business? So just looking at those things to help you kind of garner where you're going and to make you stay focused on what you're doing in this business. And I think that happens a lot of times when we start businesses and we don't have a clear picture or understanding of what a business is to do or what I'm expecting to get out of that business. When we jump out of step, we fail to get everything documented, all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So let's just make sure that we kind of understand. So you want to analyze your SWOT and make sure that you know exactly what you're bringing to the table and what you need to bring to the table. The next thing is to look at your plan, develop your business plan. Jim talked about a tool that we're using to create a business profile. I worked with someone earlier today, and just in doing this, creating that business profile, she was able to come up with her mission statement. She was able to really kind of revamp her vision statement. So sometimes look for tools that you can use too. You don't have to do everything, out there pulling stuff out of the wind, but there are resources that you can use to really develop that plan and make it. And we're not looking at, you don't have to have 150 pages for a business plan. You could simply start out doing your business profile and add to it as you need to. Remember that when you're developing that plan and you have your projections and all of those things inside of there, when you go to a banker, they're going to look at the first page, which is the executive summary. So in your business plan, make sure that that executive summary summarizes the key points so that that lender can have a one-shot snapshot of looking at the business, how well you've thought about how you want to operate, and looking at your projections to make sure that they make sense. So again, when you're developing your plan, you want to make sure that you have that summarization. With Growth Wheel, you can do a business profile, and we have staff that can help you to do that. So if you're looking to do something like that, just let us know at the end here. Now, the other thing is that you want to make sure that you create a budget, because obviously when you're starting a business, even if you don't need like massive amounts of money, you always need some money to get started. So you want to create your budget so you know exactly what you need before you go to the bank. If you go to a bank and they say, well, what do you hear? Well, I need a loan. Well, okay, so what do you need the loan for? Well, how much do you think I should get? So these are questions that you don't want to take to the banker or to a lender or an investor. You want to make sure that you're going and you have all of the information together, so that they see that you thought about this, that you put some effort into it, that you know what you want to do, you know what your expectation could or should be, and that you're showing them in that plan with your projections, your marketing, all the analysis that you've done. You're letting them know that you put the work in, that you gain the knowledge that you need as exactly to come to them, to bring that information to them. So don't go to a lender and not have the information that you need. That's not a good thing. The other thing is to make sure you put things in writing. Make sure that you have things in writing so that you're not awing and just make sure you have it all together, and go over your material before you get to the bank so that you are familiar with what you need to say and you're familiar with what you brought them. Don't have someone else do your business plan and then all of a sudden you get there and they ask you questions and you don't have the answers because you didn't do the business plan, nor did you read over it. So just make sure these are just key things that are really important when you're thinking of going into business or starting a business. And sometimes these things are forgotten. The other thing is to just understand that business plan, it really is your roadmap. It is a living document on how you plan to operate your business, who your team is, and it'll also give them insight and history on who you are as the owner, and then what plans you have in the future. So your projections become very important, and you want to make sure that you're laying things out, the marketing, how you'll make money back to pay the loan. So these are just some tips I wanted to give you before we got to the end of this. So I want you to be thinking about that as you are forming your questions. What else is it about business planning that you would like to know? Okay. Jim, you have anything you want to expound on the business planning side of that?
I really liked the point you made at the end, make it a living document. Too often people think a business plan, I need to do it to get money from the bank, and then they put it on a shelf, it collects dust. Make your business plan relevant. If it's relevant to you, it's going to be relevant to the bank or to the lending institution or to your management team or whoever. At NEF, we actually look at goals of our business plan every week or two. We review them with our board every quarter, and we update it once a year. So our business plan by the end of the year is pretty tattered. So keep that in mind. It is a living document. The other thing is planning for your business takes work. And, I've seen a lot of people just slap something together and say, here you go. And you got a business plan, but it's not really thought through. So make sure you're taking the time, because when you're planning, what you're doing is you're planning to succeed. And when you take shortcuts, you're taking shortcuts, and that gets you closer to failing. So make sure you plan to succeed. And that does take a little bit of time, but I'll remind people, I'll just say, say you put your hourly salary at $150 an hour, and you spend 20 hours, that means you've spent $3,000 planning your business, but that's all in kind. That's all your time's going into the business plan. If you fail to plan that business and you take a $50,000 loan and that business doesn't take off, you've lost $50,000 because you still have to pay the loan back. Mm-hmm. You've lost a half a year of your salary. All of that is way more than the cost of planning. So it does take work to plan, but take that time, know your business, and keep it alive.
Yeah, that's great, Jim. Thank you so much. The next one is on funding, and I'll start out here, but I'm going to have Jim actually go through this one. But the one thing I'll say is that you need to have a relationship with the lender. We put on the quarterly bail Q&A, which is the banker, accountant, insurance, and legal. But we do that because it's so important to have those individuals in your toolbox. It really helps to have a relationship before you need to go and borrow money. And then, Jim, I'm going to have you talk about some of the borrowing basics and what to bring and what's next on that.
Yeah, so, yeah, good. I forgot if I was on mute. If you're going to be looking for funding, you need a business plan. We talked about it, a lot of the pieces. Part of that is super important is what are you going to use those funds for? If you're borrowing, let's just throw out a number. If you're borrowing $50,000 from the bank, what are you going to use that $50,000 for? Because the bank or us or whoever it is going to want to see what are you using the funds for? Does that make sense? And then how are you going to make money from that $50,000? Because if you borrow $50,000 from me or from NEF or anybody and you can only make $45,000, you're actually losing money. We had a client one time came to us and they said, I'm going to lose this much money year one and even more money year two. And it's like, you're not ready for a loan yet. There might be other things that you are ready for, but a loan isn't one of them. So make sure as you go to the bank, you're going to need to bring taxes. We ask for previous 2 years of taxes. Banks will ask for the previous 3 years of taxes. And then if you're a startup, you'll still need personal taxes either way, but you also need projections, and you need projections for both existing and going forward. One of the big things about projections, that shows, how much do I think I can make? So you're working on your top line. Here's the products. I'm going to offer 4 sets of products, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. Whatever it happens to be. And here's how many I'm going to sell in each category for what average price. You come up with your top line. How much am I going to sell? Then you work through your expenses and how much do I have to pay for rent? How much do I need to pay for accounting? How much do I need to pay for marketing? And so forth. And you go down, work through your plan, and that's how you get your projections. Again, BC, myself, NBDC, any of us can give you help on projections. We're more than happy to help you through that. Don't let it stop. I see a lot of people getting really nervous with numbers. So if you get into a spot where you're stuck a little bit, let us know. We're more than happy to find a way and time to sit down and talk with you and through some of those issues. And then it's just working with the banks and making sure that you talk to different ones and get a plan. The other thing people sometimes forget to do is they forget to check their credit report. So make sure you know, what is my credit score? What is my credit report telling me? If you have some issues on your credit report, that may not be a problem as long as you can explain, here's what went on. If you have maybe a 620 and you want a 650, but you have a medical issue, you might be able to say to the bank, okay, I'm having problems, but part of it was due to this medical issue. So you can explain what's going on. If that's not a good enough explanation, sometimes the bank, or we will too, find other ways to overcome that deficiency. Maybe it's a co-guarantor. Maybe it's a little different structure of collateral. Maybe it's a little bit more equity into the cash, into the deal. There's a lot of ways to remedy things. So even if something's no, don't take that as definitive, because there's 20-some banks across Omaha. There's NEF. There's several other small loan programs. So there's people that will help you get to yes as long as you're willing to put in that work. BC, I'm sure I forgot a lot of basics, but those are some of them.
No, I think that was really good. I think the other thing too is, and I think we touched on it a little earlier, was to make sure that after they assess what they need, to make sure they take that to the bank, the lender, so that, like you said, they can show a purpose for each dollar that they want to spend. I think that's really important too. And then, what's next is, I guess waiting for, or you may have touched on this, Jim, but I think after you've done these things, you're probably waiting to see what makes sense and what do you need to do next. So just have that kind of strategically laid out on what you want to do if the loan is approved, and making sure that you do exactly what you kind of told the bank that you're going to do. I think that's important.
Yeah, and that's a good point, BC. Communicate with the bank. Something good is going on, communicate with the banker that you're working with. Let them know when good things happen. We like to hear good news. If something's not going quite right, then talk to the banker so they know beforehand. Don't wait until you missed a payment. Talk to them before you're going to have something done, because a lot of times we can do something if we know ahead of time. If we don't know ahead of time, it's too late. So
right. That's a good point, Jim. Okay, the next thing I thought we'd talk a little bit about sustainability. It's kind of like a buzz now. Everybody's talking about sustainability. But I thought that today we would just go over a couple of things and just kind of talk about that. So, and it's just, these are just tips, okay? So you don't have to, but it says that if you're thinking about sustainability, that you should evolve the company's story within. So we're talking about growth of the company. Sustainable growth happens when a business leader finds a way to continuously involve the organization's story. And you do that in your innovation and everything that you're doing. So even though you're a small business and you may not understand or have even started your road to sustainability, some of the things that they're stating that you should do is to make sure that you're telling your story all the time in this. So even if you change your website, whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that you're evolving the company's story in it. About, I just looked at something, Entrepreneurs, I think it was Entrepreneurs Magazine, I believe I saw that in, that 47% of customers, when they were searching out different companies to purchase things from and they were looking for sustainability, those companies that continuously talked about their story and their innovation of how the company has moved and evolved, those were companies that people tend to go to more often. And so as a small business, you may not be there yet, but these are some things, some tips I want you to think about. So just making sure that you understand what your story is and you're telling it in your website, and no matter what it is that you're doing, that you're always evolving that company history in that story, making sure that you say it in almost everything you do. Another thing that they talked about was to really know your core business values. And the reason why they said that was important was that when you interview people and you're going through quite a few things, they said that don't just ask them about their hard skills, ask them about questions that you want to know about them, to make sure that they align with the values, the core values of your organization. And that becomes very important, because a lot of times when you're trying to grow your organization, there's certain things you need to do that you're doing that's going to be different than what you're doing right now. And growing with sustainability in focus, you have to make sure that you're bringing on the team that you need that will help you to grow that company. So knowing your core values, your core business values, and being able to align people you hire with those core values helps your company to begin to grow faster and have the strength you need to get to where you're going successfully and to be sustainable in that growth. So that was something I thought was really, really a key thing. For example, they said that one of the core values, if your core values is vulnerability, that ask the question about failure to see what that person speaks about failure, and if they did something to change so that they wouldn't have a failure again, or if they just say, oh yeah, I failed at that and just went on. So these are things that you think about when you're trying to grow your business. So remember, the thinking of how you may be doing it right now is a little different than when you're trying to grow a business sustainably and to make sure that you're continuously innovating and doing those things that you need to do. The other thing is to make sure you have an SOP. Now you would say, well, what is that? Well, it's standard operating procedures. A lot of small businesses do not have them written. They don't know. And so a lot of times when they hire someone in, they hire them in and they verbally tell them what their job is. They may give them a descriptive profile of that role that they're supposed to take on, but there's no standard operating procedures that helps them to be able to go back and look at to see how the different departments should run. And so having an SOP in a small business and when you're trying to grow will not only help you save energy, but also it allows your employees to grow in their roles. It allows them to understand that if someone's on the coffee machine, there's an SOP. So if that person isn't there, someone else can do that position. If someone is a loan officer and someone's missing, someone else can jump in that role and be able to do that, long as there are some standard operating procedures that they can follow. McDonald's has these procedures, and that's why they're able to onboard these kids in and get them, trained. They show them the thing, and that's what they do. They do it every day. They do it the same way every day. And this becomes that operating procedure so anyone can jump in those roles and do those. So having a standard operating procedure that's written that your team, staff, employees know and are able to follow, it makes your company run a lot smoother, and it also brings strength to your company. So just saying that this person does this and that person does that, and no one knows those other jobs, when someone's missing, it weakens your team strength. So just kind of know about that and remember, it's always great. I read something that said 42% of businesses that small businesses that have a standard operating procedure and their employees or staff knows all of the different ones and can take a sheet and go and do that job, that those businesses run more efficiently. Not only that, but they also save money. And I was really, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So, the things we don't know can really be a problem for us. So having that SOP where an employee can pick it up and go run this machine that they don't normally run or that machine really is value to the business. And that allows that team to continue to grow. So as you're changing and becoming more innovative in that business, you have strength going along the way. So if you don't have an SOP for your organization or your small business, you might want to get one. If you need help, let us know. We can help you with that. The other thing was to be an empowering leader. That we have to be able, I want to make sure that, this is said right. I want to make sure, you want to be always empowering your staff, your employees, your team members, to be the best that they can be. You don't want to micromanage them or stand over them and do those type of things, because that really, number one, is irritating. But the other thing, it's annoying to have someone standing over you when you're trying to either learn something new or when you're trying to do the job that you've been told that you can do and you've been given the instructions. Now you just need to go and do it. And so growth begins, leaders have tremendous pressure on them as well already. And so to have to stop what they're doing to go and micromanage really takes away from the team. So an empowering leader does a lot of delegating and nurturing so that that individual can go off on their own and do what they need to do and be able to get those things done without having someone standing over them. Not only that, now this saves money. It also builds that employee, that team up so that they are knowing what the expectation is and they can go and do that. And then now you can begin to delegate more tasks to them, giving them more responsibility. So be an empowering leader that grows the people that are subordinate to you. And so I wanted to make sure that we got that out, because it's important that leaders kind of understand that, yes, we all have jobs, but as a leader, you have more jobs. If you're the head of the company, you really don't have time to stand over your employees or your staff or team or whatever it is to make sure they're doing whatever they do, they're not doing. And so allow them the opportunity to do what they're supposed to do. And when they're not, then that's when you can put on the other hat and say, what's the problem? How can we, help? Is it something you're struggling with? Being that empowering servant leader, I think really brings focus to growing leaders within your organization and growing potential people that are growing to become and take over some of the tasks that maybe you're doing right now. So being an empowering leader. So I want to stop right now, and because we've talked quite a bit, and I think, Jim, is there a question in the chat?
Yeah, a question from Kanesha. Can you touch on angel investors and how to approach them? Thank you.
Yes. So I would just say this. I think that there is a time and a place. Now I know there's a bunch of angel investors that I believe meet at a certain time out at there's a country club, and I don't know exactly, but you can look up angel investors. How to approach them is to have your proposal or your plan and making sure that it has everything in it that they would need to be able to make a decision on whether or not they want to invest with you. We talked about the business plan earlier, about some of the things that, and I'm going to go back just a minute here. I just want to touch on a couple of things. Making sure that you've established whatever that mission is. So tell them why for your business. The why explains your business, why it's going to exist or why it exists. The other thing is to make sure that you know exactly what strengths that you're bringing to that position and what strengths you have to hire into that position, and understanding what your competition looks like, not fearing it, but understanding who they are and what they do, and seeing what opportunities you can get from just looking at what they're not doing. Be able to develop that plan so that it makes sense. It's that the business is viable. So you want to have everything in writing and making sure that plan, where they look at it, they can look at the executive summary of it or the business profile of it and be able to say, okay, so this is the business. I understand that this is what they'll do. This is how they'll make money. And these are projections that they've estimated. So when an investor, a lender, whoever looks at those things, they know that you put effort into it, but they can also tell if those numbers make sense. And so if you don't have a strong business plan, and you might want to make sure that you go to somebody, some resource, so that you can beef it up before going to present it to an angel investor or a lender. And I would start out probably with a lender first, just to see what they would tell you, and write those notes down so that you're preparing to go to an angel investor. But you can start out by going to a lender and just getting their input, and then knowing what you need to do to beef up your plan so that when you're ready to go to that angel investor, you'll have things intact, and I think that they'll be able to listen at you. So I think that's the one thing I would say, Jim.
Yeah, and one thing you have to remember, investors can be great, but you also have to understand what's their motivation. Mm-hmm. And angel investors doesn't mean they don't want a return. It doesn't mean they don't want their money back. Some might not, but many do. They just might have a little bit more patient funds than a regular investor. So you have to understand the motivation, set it right, make sure it's clear in writing what your expectations and what their expectations are. If there's going to be an exit, make sure it's clear up front how that exit is going to be decided upon, and so forth. So it also depends somewhat what's the angel investment for you. It's finding the right angel investment. There are some in Nebraska. There's also other investors in Nebraska that may be just as good. So.
Right, and the one thing I would add to that, Jim, is that you want to make sure that whatever angel investor you're going to, make sure it's for the industry that you're looking for, because a lot of them are tech. They really are heavy on tech things, new innovations and things like that. So a lot of times, if it's a small shop business, mom, pop, or something like that, usually angel investors, it just depends on what their value, what they're looking for too. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We're happy to take other questions if there are some.
I know we talked about some things, but even if we didn't talk about it, if you have a question on something, you can ask that question. We'll take, we just wanted to call it Q&A, but we thought we'd bring you some information in the meantime. Because one thing I know for sure is that as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, both of those I am, and I have to tell you that I'm always looking for information. I always want to know, what's next. So I look at a lot of innovative things to see how I can improve on what I'm doing or what I would like to do. And I know most people who are entrepreneurs, that's something that they do as well. One of the other things I would tell you is that you want to make sure that you're in your hiring process, to say if you're hiring individuals. I think what happens a lot of times is that people will hire just anybody to put in a position. But if you're going to look at doing something sustainable in your business and you want your business to grow, one of the tips they talked about was to ensure that you're hiring people that would be able to grow with the growth you're looking for in your sustainability in that business. And so I think, your process needs to be sustainable first, right? And then invest in that team or that person that 2 or 3 people you're hiring, that they can scale with the needs of the business. So don't necessarily look to just hire someone to put in a seat, okay, in your business, but look for someone that's going to be able to grow with the needs that you need them to in scaling that business to the next level, because that's what we're looking at, sustainable growth in the business. So how will that person, what are they bringing to the table that would facilitate or connect to what you're expecting in that growth? So what are they bringing to the table? It's not just to fill a seat, but it's really to bring in someone that have the skills, the knowledge, the go get it, the ability to move and grow in that position and take it to the next level, so that the organization's expectations for their growth can coincide and move forward. So just think about that in that hiring process. I think that because one bad hire can cause your whole company to just go backwards. So put some thought into people that you're hiring. That's what I would say, and make sure that that talent is part of your strategy when you're looking at sustainable growth for your business. Did you want to add something, Jim, to that?
No, I think that's really important, to just make sure you're getting the right people on the bus, and then getting the right people in the right seat on the bus, as Stephen Covey would say.
I think the other thing too, one of the things when we're talking about sustainable growth in business is to focus on continued innovation. I'll tell you that the reason why I say that is because customers are, they're funny, and they're all about convenience today. I was at a place yesterday, I was visiting a place yesterday, and there was this restaurant that I noticed, and I want to kind of really go there, but it was, they didn't take credit cards. They took credit cards, but only certain kinds, and cash. So you either had to have cash and you had to have a certain kind of credit card in order to use it there. And so when you start having those types of issues, customers, the place was it looked like it was good food, and there was people waiting to go in. So I think that might be okay for now, but I would have to tell you that they're going to run into some challenges if innovation doesn't happen later on, because sometimes it's not just how good the food is, it's really the service as well. And so no matter what type of business you have, you want to make sure that you're continually upgrading innovation and you're staying on top of the trends that will help your business to be sustainable as well as be successful. And so I just wanted to bring that up, that focusing on continued innovation is key. You may be a small shop right now and not having all the convenience that your customer needs may be okay right now, but it won't last, because things are changing continuously and people look for convenience. So just put that in your toolbox and just know that these are some of the things that you might want to kind of focus on as you're thinking about sustainability and growing your business. I wanted to bring that in. And let's see, Jim, you have something you want to add?
Not right now. No.
We have a very quiet group today. So I tell you what, the other thing too is I think that even in no matter what industry it is, you probably always want to look at when we talk about sustainability and environmental and social and all these type goals that you want to start looking at what things in your business that you may want to um, start making it a environmentally safe type of thing. Maybe the materials that you're using are going from, I know a lot of individuals that, send out jewelry and things like that. If that's your business, and maybe, right now you're using styrofoam and that type of stuff. But what about going to the peanuts that, are not, that are a little bit more friendly to the environment? Getting rid of like one time we all used plastic straws and now we're using, the paper straws and also the cups that don't even desire or need a straw. So, always think about what things you can do. So it's just simple things that you can do as a small business to kind of change the outlook of where your business might be going. And so you want to think about those type things, always stay ahead of the game. I think that number one, as a business owner, it is your responsibility to watch the trends, watch your industry, and make the moves that you can make when you can make them. That's going to better your business. And so it's more than just being the owner of that business, but taking on the responsibility of ownership of that business. And that means more than just I own a business. It means, really being set and wanting to grow that business, wanting to hire people and have that business around for a long time. That's the mindset that a great entrepreneur should always have is, as long as I'm doing this business, I want to do it the best I can. And I want to serve as many people as I can and hire as many people as I can as well. So there is a question. What is the best way to compare your business growth to current dad growing business in your areas? Let me see if I get that. What is the best way to compare your business growth to other businesses like yours that are small? Is that what it is? I'm not sure. But anyway, so let's look at this. So this is from Teresa, and she wants to know, yeah, okay, that's what she wants. So, okay, so right now she's saying what's the best way for her to compare her business growth? But I would always say, Jim, I'm thinking that wouldn't it be in profit? Number one, I figured that if you started 5 years ago and you started on maybe the first year you made 25,000, the second year you made 40,000, the third year you had 80,000. I mean, so that's financial growth. But if you're no, and Jim, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you going to say?
Well, there's business trends out there. One way, NEF actually subscribes to a package called Fiscal. So if you have your previous 2 years of taxes, we can get that put in. Our underwriter business analyst can put that in, and then she can pull that up. I think we have access to our, Risk Institute numbers and the IRS. So you can look at it. What you want to do is look at trends to similar businesses. I know there's other tools out there either available or hopefully it will be coming to the Omaha area soon that you'll be able to do that yourself, where you basically put in your numbers and they'll tell you what this is. If you're running a small food truck, this is what small food trucks are doing in Omaha, and here's how you compare. So if you have a question specifically, if you have 2 years tax records, BC and I can work with our underwriter business analyst and have her pull that for you. Or you can go someplace like NBDC. There's a lot of resources. And
right.
When you're looking at your growth, you're not just looking at the profit, but you're also looking at your ratios. So you might be selling more, but you also want to make sure that are you holding your cost of goods in the right place? Are you holding advertising in the right place, and so forth? Yeah,
that's really good. I forgot. Yeah, we do have that. So if someone is needing that, just let Jim or I know, and we can get that to our underwriter, and she can, if you have the information she needs, then she'll be able to run that for you, and you can be able to move forward with that. That was a good question, Teresa. Thank you.
And Teresa, that's the spot on right kind of question too.
Yes.
Because I think we need more people asking.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
Asking that question of every business should be asking that question, in my opinion. How am I compared to? And even if you're in a startup, how did you get your numbers, and how do those numbers compare to industry trends? Because you're not going to be exact in everything, but you want to be close in things so that the way you're managing your business. The other thing is we've alluded to several times, but make sure you have your budget and use your projections as a budgeting tool so you can see this is what I projected and this is how much I actually spent.
And I think one other thing too is that, don't feel like you can't ask a question. There's so many opportunities. There's so many resources that we have here, especially in Nebraska, where you can go and you can set up an appointment and just have some mentoring, discuss what things that maybe you're struggling with, what concerns you have, and have individuals kind of walk that out for you. So if you're in that position, yes, in Nebraska Enterprise Fund, we do have mentors. So you can call up and set up an appointment to talk with someone about, whatever concern you have. Or even if you want to just thinking about growing your business, what does that look like for me? And so have someone talk with you about what your plans or your expectations are, and then having you be able to write those out. Growth Wheel will be a great tool that we have that will allow you to do some of that as well. So don't feel like you can't talk to someone, and don't be afraid to ask any question, because the only bad question or stupid question or whatever you want to call it question is the ones you don't ask that you want to know. And so I'm always like, just make sure that you ask the question. We also, at Nebraska Enterprise Fund, we have, certified people that are able to do credit counseling that'll help you build your credit as an asset so that it becomes what you use to as an asset in your business. And so, we have all those things available. So don't be afraid to check with us and look at those things and see what we have that are available to you. So we're more than happy to discuss any situation with you. So any concerns of that nature, just let us know. We're here. And today we're just talking about planning, funding, and sustainability. But if you have a question on anything, you can definitely ask us that question or send it in Q&A or on chat. Just let us know. I think we have a few minutes, and so if you have those questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask them, and we can get them answered for you. And if you think of something after this call, I do have our information on the backpack here, and you'll be able to contact Jim or I or by email. And I forgot to put the phone number there, but let me put it in the chat so that you can go directly if you need to call. So our number is 402, so you can write it down, 685-5500. And you can call that number. Jim's, my extension is 201. Jim, you want to say what your extension is?
Yeah, extension 155.
And Jim is 155. So you can give us a call. Jim is busy a lot, but if you call that number, we'll get, one of our mentors will definitely get back with you and talk to you about whatever question that you have need of. Okay, and I just want to make sure that we had that. So we touched on the angel investors and how